Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Show with your host, Jeff Lopes.
We're live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. We have here a friend of ours right across. He's got the beard going, but he also has the, what'd you say was in your milk this morning?
It's coconut milk.
There you go. Kyle Depiesse. Did I get that right? Did I break that up right?
You said it so slow that you might have messed it up. Depiesse. But hey, that was a lot closer than the first time you tried it. So I'm taking progress here.
We're in the right direction. How I start our podcast is before I even do a little intro, I always let the guests kind of give more of an understanding of where they are in their life and what they're currently up to. You're a podcast host. You do, I would say, is it dad or just men adventures?
It would be more just men in general.
Just men in general adventures. Yeah. There's a lot of layers to you. I'm excited about this conversation. We're gonna have fun today. So let's give the audience what you're currently doing, what you're up to. Then we're just let the story flow from there.
Sure. So
Kyle, what is up in your life right now, buddy?
Well, speaking of up, we live in the up north area of Minnesota, the Northwoods. That's the beard, that's the flannel in the background. If you're watching the video, it just happens to be there. But this right here is a surfing picture from like the 70s in California. So I'm all over the board with my style. But my wife and I, we've been married since 2013. So just over 8 years. We have one son. He's 4. His name is Cal. And we moved up to the Northwoods of Minnesota from the Minneapolis area in October of 2020. We were just craving a different season in life. And I believe in seasons. I believe in rhythm, not balance. And we found a beautiful place on a lake and we took the opportunity. Everyone's working from home and we're going to continue to do that. So we said, if we don't love where we live, why do we live there? And so that one question really changed our life. And we're sitting in the middle of this season. Pretty excited for it as the weather starts to get warmer. We've got the boat coming. I've got an e-foil on order. And so I'm just really excited to enjoy the summer up here. But it wasn't always that way. I'm a corporate executive. Burnouts. I burned out of corporate America, trying to climb the corporate ladder, which I'm sure we'll get into. And then from there, I just started to design a life around fulfillment and what really lit me up and how I'm uniquely gifted, my talents, my story, and where I can provide value to people. And I really started to use that as my navigating compass. And so that's brought us to where we are today. So I do a few different things, all revolved around one word, that's fulfillment. So depending on where people are at on their journey, I can help them. So when I was burned out of corporate America, I was in a ton of debt as well. So I couldn't just leave my job because I was enslaved and in chains to that paycheck. So we had to unravel that process, and we paid off about $380,000 in debt in 38 months. And then I started designing a business or a few businesses around that. So I help people do the same thing. I help people get out of debt. I fix and help their money mindsets from scarce to abundant, not the other way around. And then for those who are in a job they love, but they just don't get out enough and they don't cross things off their bucket list, they're successful, but they don't celebrate themselves. I create 2 times a year these bucket list experiences for high performing men to step into to find work-life rhythm. So that's kind of where we're at today, man.
So there's a lot of layers there I'm going to dive into. So one was what or when was that aha moment when you said, okay, I enough with corporate America. I need to find my purpose. Like, was there a conversation? Was there a moment of like something that triggered you? Like, what changed the path right there? Or what altered where your mind was going?
I could tell you exact day. It was Thanksgiving of 2014. And we were living in Minneapolis at the time. It was just my wife and I. We didn't have our son yet. And I had my family visit for Thanksgiving. I was working in e-commerce. We were slinging video games. And so I managed all the distribution of video games for Amazon, Target.com, Walmart.com, all that stuff. And obviously Q4, Black Friday, and here it's big, right? That's when we do a ton of our business. So on Thanksgiving Day, with all my family in town, I drove into work around 4 a.m. because I had to get some things done to prepare for Black Friday. And I drive into work and I get there, there's no one there. And I just look around, I'm like, what am I doing? I just left my family on a holiday, a really important holiday. My family's visiting me from out of state, and I'm here and I'm building someone else's business. And it doesn't really matter because I look around and there's no one else here. I'm the only one doing this. And at that point, I'm like, something's got to change. So for me, it was Thanksgiving Day, 2014, when I left my family to be going into work when I didn't really even have to.
Did you ever have any entrepreneurial itches prior to that?
None, man. Actually, my dad, he's a carpenter, and my dad tried to start his own business when I was really young.
Yeah.
And it was unsuccessful. I watched him fail at it. He did it for a few years. He hated it, didn't do well at it, had to hire and fire a lot of people in the trades business. There's a lot of turnover there. And so I watched him do that, and I watched him hate it and eventually close it up and go back to work for someone. So there's no one in my immediate family, no one really in my extended family that's an entrepreneur.
So when you did that, okay, first let's get into, there's a couple of things I want to kind of unpack there. The debt, how did that debt accumulate? Because that's a good amount of debt. Was that just living outside your means? Was that living in a forecast future, thinking, okay, I'm going to be able to pay this back and let me buy these cars now, let me buy, like, what put you in that situation? Like, everybody's in different mindset, right? Was it a house? Like, what put you in that situation?
My 30th birthday, I threw a huge party and I had U2 there and I had all these other, I'm kidding. Yeah, it was a bunch of, it was years and years. Like you wander yourself into debt. I mean, we had a bunch of consumer debt. Yep. Yeah. Car loans. And then we also paid off our house. So we went radical with it, man. So most people probably wouldn't do that. We just decided to do it. But yeah, you just tend to put your head down and then you put your head up. After a certain period of time, you're like, whoa, where did all this debt come from? You don't pay attention because you always ask yourself, well, yeah, I can fit the payment into my budget. I can fit this payment in. Before you know it, like your payments, they ballooned and you are at or you are exceeding your means.
Yeah. So when you decided to, because there's so many things here we're going to talk about. So the podcast, when did you start the podcast first off?
March 16th of 2020, the day that the US went into lockdown. I'll never forget the day. Okay.
I literally started mine's probably about a week later.
Okay.
We're on the same mindset with that, right? It was just, it was when, like you said, there's so much chaos, but you have to see opportunity in that chaos. Mm-hmm. What was your mindset when you started the podcast? And when I started my podcast, I started it for two reasons. It was branding and networking. What was your mindset when you started the podcast?
Well, mine was really one. And I wanted to provide value to people and content to people who were just like me, who were stuck in a job that they did not love, but they were probably stuck financially. And they were also stuck because of their mindset. And so I wanted to bring people onto the podcast to talk about how they redesigned a life, gone away from something that brought them no fulfillment into something that is ultimately incredibly fulfilling to them. So I wanted to bring inspiring stories. And then I wanted to provide content from my own story as well to help, because I was uniquely positioned to do this because I did it myself. So that was it. But then the byproduct was just a meeting, amazing people. Like I got to meet you, just got to meet so many incredible people that I otherwise would not have.
Yeah. It's been an incredible journey, because just like you said, I think 2020 has made the globe so much smaller.
Yep.
And it's forced people to network.
Yes.
In ways they might have not in the past, because a lot of people are comfortable in their own zone, in their own workplace. So, and being able to now navigate, because you had just more time, you're digitally more sound. So you're put in a situation where networking became part of your, like, I try to network with 12 to 15 new people every week. Like, and that's a steady goal for mine every week, 12 to 15 new contacts. And it's just, you never know who you're going to meet or who they're contacted with. And it just starts spiraling, right? So I love that part of it. So when you put your mind to do your first event, when was your first event held with the men, and how did it all come into fruition? Like, how did you have that mindset of, okay, I'm going to do this? Because it's when you're doing an event, and for people listening, it's like, we've done events here for other avenues and other businesses, and it's a lot of work. Even a small event, it's a lot of navigation, a lot of legwork before the whole thing comes together. And then you cross your fingers. It's like a wedding. And when things go wrong that day, you just put a smile and act like everything's fine and just let it happen, right? It's just the way it goes. So when was that mindset like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is my mindset with this event. And how did you outsource, or where did you go to find your first group of men? Was it through your network? Was it people you've dealt with already? Like, I think there's a lot of layers that we could talk about there.
Oh, so I love this conversation. So my first event was October of 2019. So it's not that long ago. But people need to know that in 2017, when I had quit corporate America in 15, I became a high school business teacher because I knew I loved to uncover the process of learning. So I taught for 2 years. And when we had our son, I was promoted to be a stay-at-home dad. And I was a stay-at-home dad full-time, no work, no nothing. We put my career on pause for 2 years, and my wife crushed her job. And that's the way it worked out for us. And I had this idea because being in the corporate world as an executive, you get put into a lot of leadership conferences and leadership seminars.
Yeah.
Dude, and they're all the same. And I've been to the personal growth ones. You sit in a big hotel conference room with 4 walls, there's no windows, and you're in there for 8 to 10 hours with people you don't know, sitting at a round table, listening to a speaker who you probably could have YouTubed their keynote. And I'm like, this is so uninspiring to me. What was inspiring was after the event, grabbing a glass of wine or whatever it was, and talking with someone else who's at the conference, who let their guard down, like, hey man, this is what's going on in my life. Here's where things are at. And then you just have an amazing conversation with someone. And so I was like, well, how do I recreate that? How do I invert this whole thing? So I was given the gift of staying home with my son. That was a gift in itself. But the gift also gave me 2 years to think about, like, what do I want to do next? And I had clarity on, I want to take this whole process and do something different. So I just started. To answer your first question is October 2019. I marketed it to my network essentially. And I said, hey, here's what I see in this space of leadership, personal growth. I understand the value of getting out of your business to work on your business. But I also think that our best and most creative ideas come while we are dog sledding in the boundary waters of Canada and the US, when we're in a helicopter hovering over waterfalls, when we're watching the sunrise and we have solitude, not when we're sitting in front of our computer screen. So let me recreate that through a container over 2 days. And I had 10 people believe in me in my network, and they showed up. And this is the weird part, man, is that they're all dudes. All men showed up. I did not market to all men.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And so what was really obvious to me was there's not a container for men to have these conversations, because some of the things that they talked about there, they would not have felt comfortable sharing that in mixed company. And so I was like, all right, well, this must be a sign that I'm supposed to do this. So I put on another one about 6 months later. Do you know how many people showed up to that one?
How many?
0. And I'm like, here's a punch to the gut. I thought I was supposed to do this. And so I picked myself up, man. And then that's when I started to focus more on, like, how do I get in front of more people and client acquisition? Because I can no longer rely on my network. This is, call it the sophomore slump if you're doing events or experiences.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So when you did them, I'm all about constant feedback. Like, I'll example, like I'll give you 2 examples with Comoreware. It's a situation, even after 15 years, I'm constantly talking to my customers. I'm constantly asking what they like, what they didn't like, what their experiences with the Man's Purpose, which I started now, which is a community for entrepreneurial dads. Even though it's such a low ticket entry, it's only $47 Canadian, it's like $35 American a month, which is nothing for weekly coaching. But I'm reaching out to everybody that joins. And after the first coaching lesson or coaching call, I'm still reaching out to them, like, what'd you like out of it? I'm trying to get constant experience. With those 10 people that you had, those 10 men, did you reach out to them individually and, like, hey, what did you get out of this? What did you try to get as much feedback as you could from it?
Yes and no. I did, but I didn't. So I did. I think the issue, if I could break it, if I look back and break it down, is I really hustled to get those 10 guys into that experience, and they may not have been the right fit for where I wanted to take it. So I think to me that was an issue, and it's a lesson learned in my ego. Like my ego wanted as many people at this event as possible,
Yeah.
even if they were the wrong one, just to say, hey, I had all, 10 people there. I would have rather had 4 or 5 of the right person there.
Yeah.
And then get their feedback and how do I curate and design and continue to do this for you because you're the right avatar. So I was not clear on my avatar. And I think that was the issue. But yeah, you're right. I did not get enough feedback from that group either.
Okay. So continue it. So next event, 0.
Next event, 0.
So you're leading up to the event. Obviously, weeks before you knew no one signed up for it.
Yeah.
So where, like you said, it is a punch to the gut because I mean, everybody goes through this. Well, you went through, every entrepreneur goes through with some scales, and you look at a business, you have a certain amount of wins, a certain amount of losses. You're just hoping to win stack more than losses. That's just business in general. I mean, no one does everything perfectly and no one ever succeeds. That's what you learn from it. So when that did happen, how did you reassess everything? Let's talk into that. You're about to start that. How did you reassess where your mind was without all that?
Yeah. So I took, the problem was I took the first one and then I tried to take it from where it was to where I think it should be.
And where did you think it should be?
What I thought guys wanted would be like a full year-long commitment with 2 different. So I was forcing them to go from just committing to 2 nights one time to an entire 12 months worth of a kind of like a mastermind, a membership, along with 2 experiences. And I don't think guys were ready for that commitment. No. And so that was my mistake. So I built this new thing after the first one. No one wanted it. And I'm like, maybe I need to go back to what worked, which was just creating a really fun, really killer 2 to 3 night experience. Guys step into that. We hang for a little bit. They enjoy it. And then that's it. And so that's what I started to redesign around again. So we started, the next one was a dog sledding one in the Boundary Waters of Canada in Minnesota. A ton of fun. We had a really great time. And then last year, so October of 2020, we did a big golf one, Pinehurst, North Carolina. And then I set up a Chip Ganassi NASCAR pit crew experience. So guys got a chance to pit an actual NASCAR. And that was a blast. So then I sold that one out. I sold it out at 12. And so now I start to sell out these events because I've gone back to just create a killer container, 3 nights. Here's what it is, and market it to the right guy. And so I really started to get crystal clear on who that avatar was, what they wanted. And I just provided that instead of providing what I think they wanted. So there's your feedback loop.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So when was your last one? The NASCAR, when did you do it?
I just had one a month ago. Actually, a month ago now. We were there. Yeah, we were in Utah, Park City. We did skiing, snowboarding, fly fishing, and then I set up a mystery experience at a Olympic indoor training center.
Oh, very, very cool. And you had the 12 again?
Yeah, 12 again. Yeah.
Are you getting repeat customers or is it different guys?
Yep. So I am. And I'd say after the October one, 1/3 of them re-enrolled. After this one in March, half of them re-enrolled. So it's great. The guys are loving it because each experience is unique. I don't repeat experiences. Yeah. And now in October of 2021, the next one, I'm expanding to 16. So as I continue to get more interest, more demand, I'll just continue to slowly expand it. So yeah, we'll move up to 16.
You know what your next experience is going to be?
Yeah. It's we go back to golf, and then I'm having the number 6 wake surfer in the world teach the group how to wake surf. And then we'll also do e-foiling. If you've ever seen e-foiling, it's an electric surfboard. It's super cool.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And with this, just for the audience to understand, so there is a breakdown of, do we do a breakdown of business? Do we do a breakdown mentally, spiritually, physically? There's obviously more to this experience besides the actual quote unquote experience of the adventure. Give me a rough idea of the weekend, what the experience all holds. And if anything, this might actually help you with your advertising, right? So give me an understanding. Yeah. If I were to join your weekend, what could I expect?
Yeah. So we start off on Sundays. We start off with the most formal of the settings. So we do a nice plated sit down dinner. And I just basically talk about, here's the container that's set for you. The table's set. All you have to do is be present, step into it, play full out. So each day or each experience has a theme. And all I do is, so for example, the last one, we were skiing, snowboarding. The theme was just playful adventure. And I just wanted the guys to, I think in every man's heart is adventure. And I think when you step into that, you all of a sudden have this different lens that you're seeing the world in. So each guy comes into the experience with, here's something I really need help with, right? Whether it's, I'm struggling with where to take my business next, or I'm struggling in the health area of life, or relationships have been challenged a little bit. So they come into the container on their mind. Here's the one thing I need help with. Here's the one thing I'm going to focus on. And so I just provide different opportunities to get clarity through doing different things. Being a former teacher, I think we learn best by doing and experiencing, not by me sitting up in front of the people, in front of the group and talking about communication, talking about, all these different, that's not how we learn. We don't learn that way. So then each experience has a theme, and then we went fly fishing. So the theme was playful solitude. I gave the guys 90 minutes of just pure solitude. And then we come together after these experiences and then talk about them informally and casually, whether it's a group or I put you into partners. And then from there, that was the mystery surprise experience. So we went to this indoor action sports hub. They'd had no idea what we were doing. And as we pulled up to the building, I said, your new theme now is play like a child. You and I, we have kids, they're little, and we just know that when you're around kids, something different happens, right? You don't care what other people think about you anymore. You don't care about all you do is just, you care about being present. And here's the most unique thing, Jeff, is I had a guy who's a former pro football player. He just left his football career and he's struggling with what to do next. He doesn't know.
Identity, yeah.
Yeah. And what was really fascinating is he was running on this springboard type of a thing and then flipping into a foam pit. And he was trying to reach the end of the foam pit. And he realized, he's like, man, I keep stuttering as I come close to the jump. And then you could see like this massive light bulb go off in his head. He's like, man, I'm actually struggling committing to this jump, but that's really showing me I'm struggling committing to anything right now. And I was like, how do you recreate that aha for someone in a classroom? Like, you can't. He only realized it as he was running down this path to jump into a foam pit. So I think we learn and we experience something best by actually doing it. So I recreate that. I give them a container, I give them themes, and then they just come into it. Like, what's the one thing they want to move forward in life? And that's what they focus on. So that's pretty much it. It sounds like it's really unintentional and it sounds like it's just thrown together, but every aspect of it is completely intentional, thought through and curated.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So you said your next one's in October.
Yeah. It's in October.
And where is it to be held?
Arizona.
So how much, so your process when you're doing this, you're planning this like 4, 5, 6 months in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's
even further. Yeah. Even further, because at this next event in October, I have got to have finalized 80% the next one. So I'm at least 6 months out in advance. So right now, I hate to timestamp it, but I'm going to, as we look at, we're in end of April, early May, I'm starting to have my March of 2022 built out.
So you're doing two a year.
2 a year. Yep.
Which is good. I mean, I like the fact that you're growing them. You're not adding more to your plate.
Yeah. Well,
because it'll be overwhelming when you start adding 3, 4 events with reality or other businesses and everything else you're trying to do, right? Because a lot of people don't realize when you're throwing an event like that, like you said, it's just so many logistics put into place that could go wrong, and hotels and flights and everything. And you have, is it more local, or do you have a lot of guys flying in? Like, where are they all coming from?
Yeah, they're all over the US. That's kind of been what's been thrown at us. I've had a lot of guys from in Canada be like, hey man, I want to go. I can't right now. So it's mostly guys in the US, all the guys in the US, I should say, but I know that eventually it'll expand. But yeah, they're coming in from the East Coast, the West Coast, North, South, everywhere, which is really unique, because then these guys get to meet other guys around their same, journey in terms of entrepreneurship, their same journey in terms, most of them are married. And then probably at least half of them have kids, so that they get to meet and mastermind, so to speak, with those guys about that stuff in just a really fun way.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. That's really, really cool. So there's so many other layers of you. Last time we talked, have you started writing your book yet?
So
No
in my
pressure,
head,
huh?
does it
Am I
count?
holding you accountable, Kyle?
Did I just start sweating? I haven't yet. So I'm working on a digital course for the money mindset component, debt elimination, and that's kind of been pushed back a little bit. I've had conversations about starting it in terms of like finding an editor, finding, all these things. So I've been moving that forward in the background so that when the time is ready and I've got time freed up on my plate, I'm ready to just hit the ground running. So I haven't started writing it yet.
What does it mean for you to be a dad?
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. It's a chance to leave a major influence on my son. So I've got one kid. It looks like we're probably only going to be given one kid. But it's all about influence to me, and it's about impact, and it's about creating a legacy. And so that's what I would say: impact, influence, and legacy.
How long have you been married now for? How many years?
8
years. Explain your wife's role in your life. Obviously, you said she has her own career, which I appreciate because that's my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Is she more the supportive side? Is she more involved in your business? Give me an understanding of that.
She's not at all involved in the business, and so she's a W-2 employee. So she works for someone, staffing and recruiting. And she's very driven, and she's very professionally driven. She's the second child of 7, and all of her sisters stay home with their kids. So she's a little bit of an odd duck in the sense that she's wanted to continue her career. But man, she's a hard worker. She's got a great work ethic, and she just loves to work. So we've got such a unique spot in our life where she works 100% from home. It's very flexible, and I'm home as well. So we spend so much time with our son, and we're trying to give him so many great opportunities through traveling, and just being involved in his life as much as we possibly can.
I had this conversation yesterday with, I was a guest on a podcast yesterday, and we had this conversation of 2020 with a lot of people, their home becoming their office space. And it has led to marriages going into one of two directions: divorce or having a baby, and really reconnecting and really appreciating each other at a different level. And obviously you guys seem to be at a great spot. Where's your mindset with that and with couples? Because I always ask people, like, where's your mindset with couples that are now forced in a situation where they're together and and I think a lot of the issues is they don't know how to ask the questions, and they've never prepared themselves to ask the questions. And now they're stuck in a situation where they don't know how to talk to each other because life became so numb over years of just routine: work, home, eat dinner, go to bed. Where's your advice for couples right now that they're really struggling and really trying to reconnect? Putting you on the spot here, Kyle.
No, I'm going to give you I considered, do I want to give you my honest opinion or not?
Yeah, you do.
Of course I do. I would say that given this whole situation, working from home, lockdown, all those things, it's exposing existing flaws that were being hidden. And we can hide because we drive to work at 7:30 in the morning. We don't get home till 5:36, and therefore we just don't have to deal with anything, right? We can just go hide, and we can work. When things get bad, we just work more. We can continue to hide, and I think it's exposed existing flaws. So you have to understand. Like, all right, the situation has changed, circumstances have changed. How do I need to change? Like, the first thing you should do is point in the mirror and say, how do I change? How do I, take myself, for example, how do I, as a husband and a father, change? What does my wife need? What does my son need now that things are different? You can't expect to act the same way when things are different. And so to me, it's very simple, but it revolves around asking yourself, what do I need to do differently? How do I show up differently and better? Because it may not ever go back to the way it used to be. but use it as an opportunity for things to get better. And I think too often we look at, and this is probably just a marriage thing, but we just look at our spouse and say, you don't understand me. This is what I need. I think if you just start with yourself and you say, how do I show up better? I think you'll notice a lot of positive changes. So that's probably my just simple advice is ask yourself the question, how do I be better now?
Yeah. And I think I mean, one thing I was talking about yesterday is we talk about this all the time too, is when you're dating, you're constantly trying to impress that person. You're constantly going up and above to keep their attention. And once you get married, that slows down. Once you have kids, that slows down. And I think we just have to get back to understanding that that person may not be there forever. So what are you going to do in your mind to keep that person happy, keep that person interested in the relationship? And I think that's the biggest issue is we just, like I said, we get numb to the reality of life. And it's just another day. And taking time. One thing I was talking about yesterday is getting out of that environment. Like me and my wife, even though I'm not working from home, but me and my wife, I mean, every single night we go for a walk. And when the kids are down, we literally for 40 minutes, 30 minutes, that's our time just to connect and talk. We actually just go for a power walk. We walk around the block like 10 times. Everybody in the neighborhood knows we do that. I actually bought a weighted vest the other day because now I'm trying to make it into a workout. So we just walk and talk. And it allows us to connect on a different level where we could ask each other questions and just understand what we're both going through in different times, right? So I think it's important just to communicate and just be able to talk. And I love what you said, ask yourself what you could do. So I think that's a very important part of it. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
I always say my superpower is discernment. And what I mean by that is I think I have this ability to understand how someone's feeling when they don't communicate it. And so if I'm in a room or if we're in a social gathering and I'm very observant, right? I'm very much the type B. I am introverted. I'm an observer. I'll be the last one to kind of speak my thoughts because I need to think it through. But I'll kind of look around and I'll see like, it kind of looks like Jeff is feeling a little bit uncomfortable. I'm just going to walk up and introduce myself, say hi, talk about, whatever it might be. But I think I've got this ability to understand how someone's feeling and their energy without them communicating it.
I love that. It was funny because I'm the talker, but I'm also the observer because I always focus on, and I did this as a kid. And I remember it was a very popular, I think his name's David Nagano. He's a very popular poker player. And I remember him saying as a kid, how he learned how to read people is his mom was a heavy shopper. So he was always in the mall and he would sit on a bench waiting for his mom and he would just watch people all day. Yeah. And he goes, that taught him how to see how people's expressions, what they're feeling. And he would, in his mind, play these roles of what they're going through in their life. And as a kid, I remember always like just watching people and just seeing their expression, if they're happy, if they're not, when the couple's walking the mall, are they really in love? Like I used to always play these roles in my head. And so I love that aspect because it's such a powerful tool to be able to read a room because it's something you could utilize for work and there's so many purposes of it. So I appreciate that. If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered by your loved ones?
Someone who cared about others and for others. That's the first thing that comes to mind is, that's a really good question. I haven't thought about that, but
have you ever, a lot of people do these on part of their programs, and it's something maybe you could even add to your program if you don't already, is getting the guys to write a living eulogy. I think it's very powerful when you sit there and actually be able to read like, hey, this is, because I think that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of people, you hear this a lot more lately. I don't know, maybe I'm hearing a lot more lately, but it's something somebody brought to my attention years back, where when you're on your deathbed, how many people, that's the moment you realize all the regrets of your life. So it's being able to write them down and say, this is who I am. This is what I want. Like if it's sitting there and just listening to somebody say, hey, this guy was a true asshole. It's going to change how you react to people, right? So I think writing a living eulogy is something, it's powerful, right? It's just one of those aha moments. Like when you're writing your will, you're like, wow, like I'm actually writing a will. Like I'm not going to be here one day. So I think that's so powerful. So continue on that. I apologize about that.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. I think living, you know what else comes to mind, and this wouldn't surprise you knowing what I do for work, but living life to the fullest. There's and experiencing things. There's a great saying. It's you never see a moving truck follow a hearse to the cemetery.
Yeah.
And to me, it's about like live your life and experience things and live it to the fullest. And I don't, live and work to accumulate things. I accumulate experiences. And to me, that's more important. So experiences with my family, with my son, with my wife, with friends, that to me is really important.
Yeah. You know, what's crazy is for years, I had a different mindset. It was always about how many properties I could build, how many stuff. I was always an entrepreneur, which is driven. Even though I've always been, especially the last 12 years, my story with my son, family is everything. Right. Mm-hmm. But my wife is the opposite. My wife's a very grounded person. My wife's saying, and I don't know if we talked about this, but my wife says this all the time, like if today didn't change, it was a good day. To her, it's all about simplicity. It's all about just building memories with your family.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit about the car? Like my wife's the type where she'll drive a car till it's done, and I'm not the one like forcing her to go change it for another car. Like is all about simplicity and just getting by and being healthy and happy and just building memories with your family. So I would say the last few years I've really, and I think we talked about this also, I think the last few years I've really taken an understanding of time as a currency and living with no regrets. And I try to have that mindset when it comes to my family and my close friends. Like, I don't want to have that moment where it's like, shit, I should have done that, or shit, I should have picked up that phone call. So I try to have that mind anytime there's a phone call, anytime somebody calls you, anytime my parents ask me to do something, I try to have that zero regret mentality. So it's like, I could feel at peace that I did everything I could at that moment. So I think that's very, very important for people to understand that it's life is so bloody short, man. Yeah. Life is so short. You got to live with zero regrets at all times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. Someone was just saying, this is a really good way to look at that, Jeff. Someone was saying, well, so my parents are 72. Let's, the average age in the life expectancy is what, maybe 80, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe it's.
I know where you're gonna go with it. I think we talked about this.
It could have been you and me, but it's worth it. If the listener hasn't. So if you're like, well, if you see them 3 times a year and they live to 80, that's 8 times 3 is 20. Like you got 24 experiences left with them, 24 moments in person. Like, what are you going to do with them? Yeah. And I think that's a powerful way to look at that currency of time.
Yeah.
In terms of moments and experiences. So yeah, that's worth saying because I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I 1000% agree. And I think it was our conversation we had that, and I've actually used it to other people since then, because it is even just like you said, if we look at 80, take away our age, what do we have? Like I got 36 summers left, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. Any last thoughts you want to leave with our audience?
I think this conversation where we just kind of close this up here with time and currency and experiences, but don't sit back and wait for experiences to happen to you. Be the one to create the experiences. What I did with creating these 2 times a year bucket list experiences, I really created it because I wanted it and I needed it and I craved it in my life. And so I was just the one to create it. So, don't sit back and expect or wait for someone else to do it. Why don't you be the one to do it? Create your own experiences, create your own memories, create your own moments, and then be present in them. I sit around here, I've got my phone on silent, but I look around being a stay-at-home dad for a season of life. And man, so many people are just locked into their phone. And, you go to sporting events for kids and you look around in the stands and the parents are just, their faces are glued in their phones.
Simple words, be present.
Oh man, just be present, because your kid, they just want you to be present. And we're screwing up our kids, man, by just staring into our phones and not giving your kids your time and presence. So that's it, man. It's just be present, create memories, create experiences, create moments.
I love it. I'm going to put on all our show notes how to get a hold of Kyle. What's the best social presence that you're most active on right now, and your website and all that?
Yeah, Instagram is probably the most I'm the most present on Instagram. So that'd be it. Kyle_Depiesse. The website is also just kyledepiesse.com. You can find me on there and the experiences. And I love to engage with anyone who reaches out. That's how you and I connected, I think, through Instagram. So I love to connect with people. One of my favorite things to do is cheer people on. So I'd love to have that opportunity.
I appreciate that. I'm going to give it one more go. I appreciate you, Kyle Depiesse. Did I get that right this time?
You did. Nailed it.
I nailed it. Nailed it at the end. I saved my ass here. I appreciate you, brother. This has been a great conversation. And I think there's a lot of things we're going to be doing together in the future because we have the same mindset and the same presence.
Yeah.
And all the lumberjack stuff makes you officially Canadian in one way or another.
I'll take it, Jeff. I appreciate you, man. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it, brother. Have a good day, buddy.
You too.